Hey everyone, you're at the Hub. You're with Matthew and
Angelique.
we've been talking. There's like some other sessions and segments with us. We're going to continue today. We're going to move more towards the yoga practice and showing some yoga stuff. But I want to continue talking and asking Angelique some tougher questions about tough and like hard to describe about what it's like to live in a wheelchair with a disability, with a spinal cord injury in particular. Angelique, just so they get a quick little background, how long ago were you injured?
A little over 7 years ago, 7 years in June, so 2012.
And on previous segments, you learned she was hobnobbing with the executives in Santa Monica, living a cool life, right?
I was.
Definitely.
Hobnobbing.
And started yoga and was a yoga teacher before she was injured. One of the things I want to ask you about just kind of quickly is, and it's not quickly because it's a huge question, what are the things, and you told me about this a little bit off camera, but what is the thing that you think is hardest about living with a disability or getting around in a wheelchair?
It changes every day,
sure.
I think. And like today, it feels like just being stuck in this position and wanting so desperately to be out of it. You know, like sometimes I get to the end of my day, and sometimes the end of my day can even be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like, just want to get out of my chair. I just want to like stand, or I just want to lie down, or I just want to like stretch my legs. And sometimes it's just not going to happen for a while. So
yeah. So the thing is too, is especially this is true because you live with a lot of chronic pain, right?
Yeah.
So you think like kind of like when you hurt, kind of being able to change your physical situation. That's
Yeah.
part of it. But obviously, that's also the way you're describing it. It's actually a little bit more than that. It's not. It's almost a metaphor. You feel kind of trapped.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
Well, and you know, like this chair is freedom for us, so it's everything. It's like we can't do anything without this. And then at the same time, you know, oftentimes you just feel trapped in it. And that's the weird dichotomy of what this thing is, you know?
It's funny because in a lot of I've been injured for 42 years, and so wheelchair technology, when I started at 13, was way different, and the chairs were 3 times as heavy. But then there's this big push as they started to be designed, wheelchairs getting more designed by like bike makers. The big breakthrough in wheelchairs, actually, I remember hearing this, was a guy who designed bikes for Fuji bikes. Oh. His best friend got injured. And so a whole bunch of the innovation started from a guy that was just thinking about his buddy, trying to make the chairs better.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's been a push too, it's weird, they try to, like, especially when you're paraplegic, you know, more active, is that the wheelchairs, they try to get you to like have them become part of your body. Mm-hmm. Which I've always resisted, right? That I didn't want my wheels to be legs. So that was a story that I didn't, you know, or my arms do both the work for my arms and my legs. There are certain stories that I kind of resisted. I always wanted to be living on a wheelchair. I get around with the wheelchair, but it's not part of my body. Have you thought about that? Like what? Like, you know, because the way they're setting it up, we're kind of blending into the wheelchair more.
Yeah. I guess I thought about it a little differently, but
that's the point.
I wanted the wheelchair to disappear around me. I've always tried to, not that ever happens, but I've always wanted it to seem like the wheelchair was less noticeable than I was in some way, like smaller back, everything more compact, and in some ways, it may be the opposite of what you're saying. So, I don't know if it makes a difference.
What's interesting to me is that, like, I used to take that. I know exactly what you mean about, like, I used to take it as a compliment, like, oh my God, I forgot you're in a wheelchair. Like,
right.
I'm hanging around with people, and all of a sudden there's a stair, and they're like, and they forget, right?
Yeah.
So, because I didn't want to be defined by it, right? So, but I was never a gearhead type of guy that liked the like mechanics of it and the speed of it. Like, I've never been thrilled by speed. necessarily, right?
Oh, yeah.
But how do you think it's, this is, we're in that subtle dynamic, like, how do you, like, I often forget I'm in a wheelchair even when I'm in a wheelchair. Have you ever, you know what I
Oh,
mean? Like,
yeah.
you kind of like, I still get shocked, as I've said before to you, about like pictures of me and I'm getting around in a wheelchair, or that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like, in what subtle ways, besides like trying to make it smaller and less visible, do you think that you transcend that you're in a wheelchair?
Subtle ways? I'm not sure.
Whatever ways.
There are times that I'm performing that I feel like I transcend that I'm
Talk about
in
that a little bit.
wheelchair.
Yeah. Performing what kind of stuff?
Well, if I'm dancing, there are times where I feel like personally, I don't know what the experience of out there is, but my personal experience is that the journey I'm on, this part, the wheelchair doesn't even play into it. I mean, I'm using it, and it's what's getting me around, but I feel free of it. I just feel free. I don't feel like it's even, part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that way, I feel like I've transcended in those times. And there have been other times, like I think I've had that experience teaching yoga. I think I've had that experience, like probably being out with friends, or just like being in like those really cool moments where you're in the moment, where you're in the moment, where I'm in the moment, I should say, and so I'm actually hovering at this place that isn't caught in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just in life. And so,
which is very different than that being like a form of denial.
Right.
Right? It's like you're denying that you're in a wheelchair or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but like you get those moments where it's not even part of your identity. It's not even part of your experience of what's exactly happening in that moment. Here's like a practical question. So you're at a party and then it turns into there's a lot of dancing going on and you're dancing. Do you move your wheelchair much, or is it more about you moving around in your chair?
It's always more about me moving around in my
Right.
chair. Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think is really important. So one of the things on a very practical level that I have found is that it's important for me not to just live in one spot. So like if I were to be dancing, like I want to make sure my sitting bones are moving, and I'm like moving and sliding around my wheelchair as if it's my body's doing it, my legs are part, the whole thing is moving.
Yeah.
Right, which I wasn't able to do when I was first injured.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you, is there a point where you got better and better at moving with your whole body?
Yeah, and it changes because, like, my pain, unfortunately, like, the pain that I have sometimes is triggered by, like, movements that I have. So I notice that sometimes I hold myself very stiff because, like, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to hurt. So I have to really focus on letting go.
Yeah, so she have a burst fracture right at L1, right?
L2.
L2, and so she has a lot of like pain that goes up and down her legs and radiates from that spot. So that's one of those quiet strategies, like try not to like poke the bear, right, of pain.
Yeah.
So you kind of hold in that spot, which so letting go. Like what practices do you have to be able to let go at the spot that you're holding against the pain, or not physical spot, but you're saying you go into a state of being that is so gripped because you're trying to stay small enough to not poke the bear.
Yeah.
Right? How do you let go?
Sometimes you just poke the bear.
Because you have to.
Sometimes you just
you
do it.
want to do
Yeah.
it. And
But you go on the ride, right? So there are times when, like, maybe I'm in rehearsal and it's just like, it's just not happening because, you're just, the process is sometimes it's different. It's a different one than when you're like hitting the stage or whatever. But so that may hurt a little bit more, and then I take that one a little bit more tentatively. But there are times when if you decide you're going to do that, or I decide I'm going to do that, I'm going to just go for it. And then because of the situation that I'm in, like the endorphins come, like I can rely on that. Like there's the nerves, there's a little bit of stage fright, there's like all this stuff that's going to come up to help me. Like all of those like lovely chemicals are going to be like, don't worry, we got you. Like you won't feel it till the end. And chances are even then it's not going to be quite as bad. Because I'm relaxed, I'm just like going with it. So
yeah, one of the things and then is that for me, because I spent in the first 12 years, before I started yoga, I was really like told to get really strong in my upper body and learn to kind of move my paralyzed body through life. And for me, it was a big breakthrough to actually try to have experiences that included my full body. So the one I asked you about was dancing, right? And you went right to performance dance, and I was trying to get you into the party at the place where Prince is playing and you're blaring and you're part of a crowd and just dancing, or like a wedding, right? Because then you're in community and not being defined by your wheelchair as much.
And
right?
even that's different.
Right. Say more about that.
Well, because I feel like then you're in the moment, like, or I'm in the moment, and that's still a different type of. I feel like I'm still operating in a different place. I don't always get that feeling, and I can't always be there. Like sometimes it just hurts, and there's just nothing I can do, and I'll just take a pain pill, and I'll just like.
That's the trap feeling you're talking about.
Go do it. I have had the experience of like being in the dance floor, like having a great time, just not even thinking about anything, and then like walking off the dance floor and having somebody go, "Good for you."
Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, then I start at like a wedding, I start getting like the sympathy dances or the excited dances where they actually see a guy in a wheelchair can dance and they can have a lot of fun with it. So then I start to become like the bouncing dancing partner of like people will come up and women will start trying to dance with me because like actually they can feel good about dancing with someone in a wheelchair, but it's actually a good dancing experience, right? So there are all these things that start to happen socially in those. But what I'm curious about and what I want in the future sessions here to go for is like what it is to have those transcendent full bodies experiences where it's not that you're escaping your reality of being in a wheelchair, but you're being more whole, right? And that those are part of the experience, those what you're calling present moment experiences. I think everyone strives for. It's like I'm wondering out there, you've had those experiences, and some of them are more dramatic than others, right? Where maybe it's singing in a choir, maybe it's who knows what it is, where you have those experiences where you're collectively part of a whole and you're being full-bodied in that whole and you're not having to think about it and manage. Because one of the things I find about living with disabilities, you're constantly managing stuff.
Yeah.
Constantly. I'm holding my hand right here. I'm making sure I'm staying balanced. But one of the breakthroughs for me, and this will end this session on this, was when I first started yoga, I started to do practices, and I want you to try to do it with me. And if you want to do this at home, do it at home too. Have you ever practiced with you ever clapped your hands with your whole body?
No.
Right? So this actually, I used to start my yoga practice like this.
Okay.
When I was living alone in California, I was a little bit out there doing a lot of yoga, right? But like instead of just like doing the thing here, right? I would try to see my whole midline. So like this would be just clapping with my hands, right? Right? Just like thinking it's right here, like this is the contact. But I started to practice things. I used to go out on my front porch, and my neighbors would wonder, what the hell is he doing clapping on the front porch, right? But like just try to see your whole midline, both sides of your lungs, both sides of your legs, both sides of your feet, coming into the clap at the same moment, right? So there's me just with my hands. Where I start trying to have my whole energy come through my hands. My legs too, see? Now you find the spot between your hands that feels right. And as you start there, start adding your inner thighs, adding your heels. Watch how you hit your hands. There it goes. That's where it starts happening. See your whole body starting to go now? These are practices that what are you thinking?
No, I felt it and then it went away. Like
Try it again.
I had it and then it was.
I hope you're trying this at home. Clapping with your whole body is actually like clapping with one hand too. Where you're seeing inward and you're moving outward. So let me try for a second. So there's a way, I used to get really good at this, I haven't done it as much for a while, where you start to get it where right? Where it's like happening all the way through. And to me, this is part of like learning how to bring vibration through my whole body, but also starting to see the inward dimension of every outward action. These types of things, they seem kind of like, they're not like yoga poses, but they're more than you think. And that's the kind of experiences, given what we've heard Angelique say about loving those things in the moment that like feel transcendent of being in a wheelchair or living with a disability. Those things happen in yoga practices. Let us know if you've ever had any experiences about where all of a sudden you lost track of your body by being so in your body. You lost track of your situations while you're being so directly involved in an experience, right? Which is different like being part of a mob. Think this through a little bit. Until next time, we'll see you again. Hey, I'm back. If you liked what you saw, there's more coming. To keep up with new releases, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on your notifications.